Hello, my name is Amanda Willis. I have decided to do Chapter 11 entitled Narrative and Truth from the Cambridge Introduction to Narrative. The literary work that I chose are the Hitler Diaries. The Hitler Diaries is a set of 60-plus supposed notebooks written by Adolf Hitler covering the years 1932 to 1945. In 1983, Stern magazine investigative reporter Jared Heidemann was the start of it all. Heidemann was in contact with a Nazi memorabilia collector. This collector, Fritz Stiefel, had the first found diary. Stiefel put Heidemann in contact with Fischer, the man who sold Stiefel the first diary. Fischer and Heidemann set up a plan to get the diaries. There was a rumor that there were even more diaries. It took several years for Heidemann to obtain the diaries because they had to be smuggled in because of the way Germany was running at the time. After Stern magazine announced and printed the Hitler Diaries, the real story came out. Fischer was also known as Konrad Keju, a criminally known forger, and he was the real author of the Hitler Diaries. There are several different reasons why the world believed that the Hitler Diaries were real and several reasons why there were many skeptics. Stern magazine and Heidemann took the world by storm. A lot of what happened in 1983 relates back to what we studied in Chapter 11. Abbott describes several different narrative and truth factors that apply to the Hitler Diaries. Why were they so believable? Why was the world so ready to accept this story? What outside forces made them believable, and what outside forces made them unbelievable? What about historical accuracy? How does this relate to the James Frey story that Abbott describes in Chapter 11? First, I would like to discuss something that Abbott says on page 153 in the Cambridge Introduction to Narrative. She said narrative nonfiction differs from narrative fiction in its referential function. We expect it to convey as best as it can the truth of actual events. It is constrained in what it can affirm, particularly in areas where the truth cannot be documented. I think this applies to the Hitler Diaries. The Hitler Diaries were expected to convey the truth of actual events as best as it could. Did this happen? Well, no. So this means that what was once believed to be a narrative nonfiction actually turned out to be a narrative fiction. It could not deliver the truth of actual events. This leads us to paratext. Abbott talks several times in our book about paratext. Chapter 11 was no different. Abbott defines paratext as material outside the narrative that is in some way connected to it. It can be physically attached to the book, like a book jacket, the table of contents in the front of the book, titles, or illustrations that might be in the book. It can also be things outside of the book, comments by the author, on a TV show, reviews, or other works by the author. Paratext, to me, is what made different parts of the Hitler Diaries believable, but what also made them unbelievable at the same time. Outside sources made the diaries seem like Heidemann had hit the jackpot, and other outside sources made him look like a criminal, even if he didn't know that was going on. Throughout my research, I found 4 different reasons for paratext, and for why they were believed and why they were not believed. First, the reasons they were believed. Collecting and displaying Nazi memorabilia was illegal in Germany at this time. For fear of being caught, Fischer had them smuggled in, and it took a very long time to obtain all of these diaries. The story of where the first diary came from is also a reason it was believed. Fischer, which is also known as Konrad Keju, told Heidemann that the first diary had been recovered from a plane crash in East Germany. When Hitler found out about this crash, he is quoted as saying, "In that plane were all my private archives that I had intended as a testament to posterity. It is a catastrophe." This quote and account make it seem like maybe he did have diaries hidden on the plane. Another reason they were so believed was because of a handwriting analysis Stern had done. The handwriting in the diary matched up perfectly to documents also to be known by being written by Hitler. It later turned out that these documents were also forgeries by Konrad Kaju. The last reason that Hyndman and Stern believed that the diaries were true was its outward appearance. Fisher, also known as Kaju, scuffed them up and stained them very well with tea to give them a battered appearance that they might have gone through a plane crash and have been stuck in storage or anything like that. Paratext is also responsible for reasons that the diaries were not believed. Accounts of people Hitler knew was one of the reasons it wasn't believed. It had been known that he loved to write, and none of his Nazi intimates or even his secretary ever believed that he had kept a diary. Another reason was the actual handwriting analysis. After Stern began to question the authenticity of the diaries, they sent some of them to the Federal Archives of West Germany to be tested. They came back as false, so they sent the rest of them, and those too came back as false. It had been clear to some people that the pages were too white for a pre-war manufacture. It was also later discovered that all of the diaries, spanning 13 years, had been typed on the same machine. Lastly, the content of the diaries were not accurate. Parts of the diaries had even been plagiarized from Demiror's Hitler's speeches and proclamations, also known as Konrad Kaju's favorite book. We can also relate the Hitler Diaries to James Frey, as Abbott talks about in Chapter 11. The same thing that happened with James Frey and A Million Little Pieces happened with the Hitler Diaries. A Million Little Pieces was printed and accepted by the public. There was never any doubt. After the initial release, it was announced as not being completely true. The same thing happened with the Hitler Diaries. They were announced and printed in the magazine, only later to realize that they were falsified. Neither Frey's printing company nor Stern magazine knew that the story wasn't true when it was printed. The reasoning for the false information is also similar, though one is on a much bigger scale. Frey wanted his story to flow and to sell, and Hyndman and Stern magazine wanted to have a popular story and to make a lot of money. When we look at the Hitler Diaries as what they really are, a work of fiction, we can relate them to historical accuracy. Historical accuracy makes up for some of why the diaries were believed to be false in the first place. Abbott says that a reader's reaction to history and fiction depends on how invested a reader is in a particular version of that story. I think many Germans wanted to believe that this story was true, because in the diaries we see a completely different side of who Hitler may have been. It could have rewritten history. They reacted to it the way Kaju wanted them to, and for a while they believed it, and for a while he made a lot of money. The Hitler Diaries were false, yet so many people believed in them. This ties back to Chapter 11 of our book. Abbott takes on a much bigger scale of what narrative truth is and how they can relate. Thank you for your attention and for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And here's my works cited page. Thank you.